What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest, starring Cary Grant, Eva Marie Saint, and James Mason. So, North by Northwest is pretty much the spy thriller that predates 007 James Bond. One could say that Alfred Hitchcock laid the foundation for what would become the spy thriller with movies like James Bond and even Mission Impossible. North by Northwest is one of those early examples of how to do a spy thriller. Now, North by Northwest is considered to be one of Hitchcock's most signature pieces, one of his most outstanding works. People have given it 10 out of 10, said it's one of the greatest things ever made from sliced bread. I'm just going to say that I thought the movie was solid. Yeah, I thought North by Northwest is a pretty good movie. I do not like this movie on the same level as a Rear Window, a Vertigo, or even Rope. But I will classify it in the same vein as Strangers on a Train and Dial M for Murder, in which they're solidly constructed movies, though they tend to drag on more, but they tend to drag on in a lot of areas, and they just stretch out certain scenes just for time. That to me is North by Northwest. It's a solid movie that you could have easily cut a good 20 minutes out of, and I really don't think you would have lost anything. North by Northwest goes on for nearly 2.5 hours, and a majority of the runtime is just very slow-paced scenes, slow-paced scenes, dragged-out scenes that, to me, they just go on longer than what they should. If Hitchcock would have cut out maybe 1 to 2 minutes from each of the scenes that drag on longer than they should, this movie to me would have had a much more tighter pace. It would have had a much better flow. Me personally, I think that's what kills North by Northwest. You're pretty much dragging out a movie that's pretty much about mistaken identity, and you're dragging it out for a very, very long time. Now, that's not to say that you can't make a 2.5 hour movie about mistaken identity and make it fun and exhilarating. But by 1958 standards, the storytelling with the spy thriller was very, very new during that time. It's not like today, where you can do a 2.5 hour Mission Impossible movie and be thrilled from start to finish. If you like the Mission Impossible movies, I am not a big fan of them. Same with James Bond. I guess you could say I'm not the most. I guess you can say I'm not the world's biggest spy thriller enthusiast. I don't hate them. I just don't go out of my way to watch them. But that's just my whole take on the spy thriller. Like they're good movies if you like that sort of genre. There's maybe a few of them that I got into that I enjoyed, but not enough to say I'm a fan. And you really do got to be a fan of the spy genre in order to enjoy North by Northwest. But if you just want to watch this movie just because you're a Hitchcock fan, and if you want to see his body of work, it's a solid movie. It's really, really good. It's backed by a really good cast. I thought Cary Grant as the character of Roger Thornhill, I thought he did a really good job in a role. He has a good screen presence. I personally prefer James Stewart in terms of the Hitchcock actors. I prefer James Stewart over Cary Grant. I think James Stewart has more on-screen charisma than Cary Grant. But for this film, I thought Cary Grant was fine in the role that he was in. I have relatively no complaints with Cary Grant. I mean, there are some moments where I think his acting could be a little bit too hokey, and his mannerisms can be a little bit too over the top in certain scenes. But for the most part, Cary Grant carried the movie pretty well. Yeah, Cary Grant as the lead role, he was fine. Eva Marie Saint played a character called Eve Kendall, who is the love interest and also happens to be an agent working for the U.S. government, who is also on the tail of the James Mason character known as Van Damme. I thought Saint, she was fine in the role as well. Her and Cary Grant have decent on-screen chemistry. They're no Grace Kelly or James Stewart, but they're fine. Even though I think their whole introduction and romance sequence on a train goes on for way too long, and I think the action and the movie itself stops to a very grinding halt, just because it felt like this entire sequence between these two felt like it went on for 20 minutes too long. I think you could have saved enough time if these two already knew each other at the beginning of the film, and as the film progresses, Cary Grant's character finds out that Saint has been an agent the entire time. I think that would have been much more interesting instead of just stopping the movie in a train, instead of stopping a movie dead in its tracks just to establish this romance. That's just how I felt about it. I think the entire romance thing goes on. Their first introduction goes on for 20 minutes too long, and their chemistry, while it's not bad, it doesn't really glue my eyes to the screen half the majority of the time. As for James Mason, who plays Van Damme, who is the guy chasing Thornhill, who he thinks is a guy called Kaplan. I like James Mason. You may James Mason, for people of my age who are not familiar with his works, will know him from the Salem's Not from no from will know him from Toby Hooper's TV adaptation of the Stephen King novel Salem's Lot, where he plays Stracker. In this movie, he plays Van Damme, who is a spy chasing down Thornhill, and I thought Mason was fine in the role. I enjoyed him. I liked him as the villain. I thought he had a nice villainous presence to him. There's no shades of gray to this guy. He's 100% wanting to get this man, kill him, and get whatever he wants to get from him. And he also has Martin Landau as his second in command to help him along the way. So yeah, I got no complaints with the cast except for some criticisms in terms of how they're handling the story and how I would have changed certain things. Now, in terms of the overall production of this movie, this is a good-looking movie. Alfred Hitchcock never disappoints when it comes to his visual style. This movie looks great. It has a grounded, realistic feel to it. Hitchcock did a really good job at doing that. I like the use of bouncing from location to location, because that's what you'll do in a spy movie. You're pretty much going from location to location, trying to get away from whoever it is chasing you down. And this movie does have some really good iconic set pieces, with the most famous one being the crop dusting scene, where James Mason is running through a field and a crop plane is trying to kill him. And then it crashes into a tank truck and you get this massive explosion, which by 1958 standards you didn't see that often. So it was really thrilling to see something like that in this movie. That was pretty cool. And the whole climax atop Mount Rushmore has very good suspense to it. It has very thrilling. Though I think the villains die in the most just unceremonious and anticlimactic way, with no really legit nail-biting final showdown, and then you get what I think is the most just confusing cut. Not really confusing cut, but the most just anticlimactic cut. So everything happens with the villains. They all fall to their doom. Van Damme falls to his doom, and Leonard gets shot in the back by the sheriff. So you have Eva, who is hanging on top Mount Rushmore. She's about to fall. Thornhill's trying to grab her. Once he pulls her up, the scene automatically cuts to a train where he's pulling her up onto a bed, and they're married. It's the most just I mean, I get the ironic sense of humor that Hitchcock was going for, but to me, watching it is like just jarring. Like, we went to like this nail biting scene, all of a sudden we're jumping to this. Like, okay, that's just weird. I mean, maybe my film snobbiest doesn't understand what Hitchcock doesn't like this transition. Maybe I prefer leads to certain scenes. That's just me. I just think the cut made me laugh. It's not horrible. It just made me laugh because it just comes out of nowhere and it's so jarring. That's just how I feel about it. But yeah, as an overall package, there's a lot more to talk about with North by Northwest, but those are just my overall thoughts on this film. At the end of the day, I don't consider this movie to be a bad movie at all. It's not. I think it's actually really, really solid. It is good. It is a good movie, I'll say that. I just think it's bogged down by an overly long runtime, scenes that could have easily been chopped down, and a storyline that good on paper and did lead to a lot of thrilling climaxes and a lot of thrilling chases, good actors and really good acting. I just think that certain things could have been trimmed down a little bit. Certain elements could have been rotated a little bit, and I think North by Northwest, from my own personal taste, would have been a much better movie than what it actually was. So, with all that being said, I'm going to give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. I personally am not the world's biggest fan of this movie, but I don't hate this movie as well. And I do understand how a lot of people will consider it one of Hitchcock's greatest works. To me, it's just a solid movie. I do not hold it in high regard as Rope, Rear Window or Vertigo or Psycho, but it is enjoyable. So yeah, those are my thoughts on North by Northwest. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.